This program is brought to you by the generous support of the Secular Society, advancing the interest of women in the arts in Virginia and beyond.
Hi, I'm Rose Martin, and this is Real Life with our very favorite life coach, Susan Harf. And like you, I cannot wait to hear what's on her mind today. Hey, Susan.
Hi, Rose. I'm so happy to see you. And I am so glad that you decided to tune in today because we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, worrying.
Oh, so we all worry, but I want to know, I'm really curious to see where this is going to go today. But I'm curious if worrying can be good and when might be an okay time to worry and when we need to let it go.
Well, first of all, you said something that's astounding to me already. You said everybody does it. I believe that most people think that they're the only ones who worry. And you're right, everyone does worry. And you know what? We don't have to. We don't necessarily have to. And when you said worrying is good, can worrying be good? No, not really.
Oh, ouch.
Because worrying is not the same thing as concern.
Okay.
So worrying is when you're perseverating either usually about the past or the future. And when you worry about the past, sometimes you get into, you go down a rabbit hole where you get into a cycle and you keep perseverating about what you should have done, what you wanted to do, what you thought you could have done, and you keep going over and over and over it, and you sort of get stuck, like the needle is not moving on.
And it's already passed, so it's not going to change.
Can't do anything about that. So it's a never-ending, no-win cycle with worrying about the past. It also borders on berating yourself too, because what I find when people think about the past and they worry about the past, they're also saying things to themselves like, why did I do that? Why did I do it that way? If I would have only chosen a different path, if I would only chosen a different person, if I would only done it differently. So they find that they're berating themselves while they're worrying about the past. When people are worrying about the future, they are oftentimes catastrophizing. And they're thinking about what's the worst possible thing that could happen. So your adult children are on a plane and you're worried it's going to crash, God forbid. Or your daughter is at college and you're afraid that she's going to get kidnapped. Or you know what I'm saying? It's like people start thinking about things that most likely are not going to go there. They're not going to happen that way.
Well, and I wonder too if we worry about actions of others, to be like, why did they do that? And you play it over in your head, or well, maybe they'll do this. And so then you get all swept up in the actions of other people, which if you don't have control over the past and you're not a fortune teller, you certainly can't control what's going on in someone else's head or what their actions are going.
You know, Rose, we're going to do another show called Nobody Ever Did Anything on Account of You.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about that for a half hour. And I got a lot to say about that. But you're right. That's another form of worrying. Worrying takes the place of being in the present. When you are in the present and you're thinking about right now, you're not usually worried, because worrying is about things that either may or may not happen, or something that did happen that you have absolutely no control over. You do have control over what we're doing right now.
So I think you're going to be able to tell what my question is going to be. Susan, if I'm perseverating and I'm worrying, right now, give me a couple of tips to break that cycle and put me in the now.
Okay. The very first thing that comes to my mind when I'm worrying is I'm not really grateful right now. Because if I was worrying about something, it wouldn't be possible, or if I was, let's put it this way, if I was grateful, it wouldn't be possible for me to be worrying. So when you get in touch with what you do have to be grateful for, you can't usually live in the past or future tense.
All at the same time?
No. At that moment, when you are doing the worrying, if you move toward what am I grateful for, it's impossible to think about that and also be worried.
Does worrying sometimes help you process information though? So if let's say you're trying to process a situation that happened, and so you're playing it over and over and over in your head, there has to be an end point where you say, I've thought about this, I've analyzed this, it's over and done with, and now I'm going to let it go.
Yes, and you need to reach that point. One of the things that can help you reach that point is to talk the situation over. If it's something that happened in the past, talk about it with a friend, a family member, a therapist, a counselor, a coach, somebody who can give you some perspective on it. Once we get outside of ourselves, which worrying is all about being inside ourselves and inside our own head and all the self-talk that goes on in our head. If we get out of that, then we open up ourselves into a whole new world of other people and other thoughts and other opinions.
So you think sometimes we're worrying about things that are over-exaggerated, or we've blown them up because we keep thinking about it so much, and then we're adding layers and layers and more layers, and pretty soon it may be not even what the original situation was or could possibly be.
Absolutely, yes,
Okay.
underlined. That is exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
And instead of doing that, what we need to do is move forward and think about right now and the future. But the other thing that goes along with what you just said is we're also thinking about what the other people did in that situation and what they might have thought about you. And that is what people come to me with a lot when they're worrying about a previous situation, something that happened in the past. They say, well, here's what the other person did. This is what they were thinking, and this is what they must think of me. And I feel horrible that happened. You know what? They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. They got so much to worry about themselves that they're not worrying about you or thinking about what you're worrying about.
Yeah, so what about you've got a partner, right? Someone may be worrying, or a friend, and they're like, you're such a worry ward. Why can't you get over this? So some people snap out of it right away, and others have to kind of negotiate or use tools that like you're giving us ideas for. What about navigating those relationships?
That's a good point, and I will answer that, and then I want to talk about some more tools that we can use to stop worrying. When somebody is worried, and you know they're having a crisis or a problem, you can ask them, is there something bothering you? Or if they come to you with their worries, and they're saying, this is what I'm worried about, the first thing you need to do is be in those relationships that you spoke about. You need to be empathic. You need to listen. That's the very first thing you need to do. Listen to what they're telling you, and not just because you have ears, listen, but listen actively by saying, so you know what I hear you telling me is this is how you feel, or this is how you felt, or this is what's bothering you. So you're saying to me that what happened last week is still bothering you. So what you're telling me about was last Monday, and it's been 10 days or a week, but it's still on your mind. So let them know, I hear you, I hear what's bothering you. And then before you say, here's what I would do, or I've been in that situation, before all that, you say, do you want me to end here? Do you want me to end with the listening? Or do you want me to give you an idea that I have for that?
I heard someone say one time, so do we want ears or voice? As a way to say, do you just want me to listen?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to contribute and talk about this a little bit? So what do you need right now?
Exactly, because you're going to get different answers. Sometimes people say, I don't want you to fix it. I want you just to listen. Other times somebody might say, thank you for listening, and if you got any ideas, I'm open to it.
But I'm hearing you say, don't be automatically dismissive and to say their feelings don't matter if they come to you and they're worried about something. Don't be like, what are you talking about? There's no problem there. Let it go. Right away. You don't do that.
And you know what people are thinking when they say that to you? They're really not thinking it's no problem. They're trying to get you to a better mood. You know, I find parents doing this with children. They're worried for them, or they're concerned about what happened to them. So when the child comes to them with the problem, they say, oh, listen, you can get over it. It's no big deal. It's no big. But they're saying that because they think it is a big deal, and they're afraid to broach it with the child. And instead, we need to listen, we need to be empathic, and then we need to say, whether it's a child or an adult, we need to say, would you like my advice?
Do you think we worry more or less as we get older?
More.
Worried just about our health, or worried about relationships, or worried just about the world, everything?
All the above.
Okay.
I know from looking at research, I know from studying people who have studied these kinds of things, namely self-talk and worrying. There's a gentleman named Dr. Ethan Kross that I wanted to mention. He's done a lot of work about negative self-talk and about worrying, and he's pointed that out, that yes, we do, as we age, we do worry more. And part of it is sometimes we get more isolated as we age. One of the things about worrying is that we get very much inside our own head. And if we're truly in a spiral and we are full of anxiety, what happens is we get to the point where we can't even hear anybody else talking. We are just so into ourselves. And one of the things that I suggest when that happens is the last thing you want to do is be with people, because you're so concerned about your own worry and your own problem and your own reaction to whatever's going on in your own life. You really don't want to be bothered. You just want to stay with that. And what you need is the exact opposite. Because when you are willing to get outside of yourself, you're absolutely almost shocked that you could pay attention. Even if it's, let's say you were very worried about something and you said yes to being with another person. And while you're sitting there having a talk with them, let's say you were really only able to pay attention 15 minutes out of the hour. For those 15 minutes, you surprised yourself by being able to get outside of yourself and be there with them.
It's almost like you can break yourself on that hamster wheel, or break that cycle. You can put, by having someone there and be redirecting it, it kind of stops it a little bit. Okay.
And there are other things you can do as well. So one of the things that I advise people to do, if they're willing, is to journal. And journaling is not always easy for people because it requires, it's work. But what I tell them to do when you're journaling is, don't be concerned about your handwriting. Don't be concerned about spelling. Don't be concerned about punctuation. Just sit down and write. Write how you're feeling. I'm feeling all the feelings that you feel and why and what. So journaling is a way for you to get it out.
Could you do an audio journal? Could you talk into a voice memo instead of writing, or is there benefit to just writing?
No, either way, audio or writing. But the act of writing is almost better. Now, I have illegible handwriting. I have terrible handwriting. But I do journaling by writing, because even though you don't even need to read it afterwards. You don't, and you certainly don't, you're not doing it for somebody else to read, that's for sure. So the physical act of writing about how you feel is important, because worrying has all kinds of physical ramifications. It creates physical ramifications, and when you're worrying, it creates more. So, so that's something I think that is helpful. Another thing that's helpful is speak to yourself, because you're full of negative self-talk when you're worrying. Stop the rabbit hole by literally stopping for a second and talk to yourself about how, in a way that you would speak to your friend who had this problem. Mm-hmm. So if you're worried about how you behaved in a previous situation, and you're worrying about it, thinking about it, and perseverating about it, and you're so upset with yourself that you did that, stop and say, let's pretend your friend said the same thing to you. Say, are you sure that the other person felt the way you think they felt? And how do you want to proceed? Do you really want to continue to worry about this? Is this helping you? Tell me what's really bothering you. What is at the core of your worrying about that situation? In other words, all the things you would say to your friend who came to you with that situation, say to yourself.
So you're processing it differently, instead of looking in the mirror and saying, oh, you're so dumb, you're so stupid, I can't believe you're letting this happen to yourself.
Exactly.
Because you wouldn't respond to your good friend that way.
You would never respond.
Yeah.
You'd never respond to your good friend that way. So instead of responding that way, respond the way you would to your good friend. Make yourself your good friend at that moment.
And treat yourself gently, not with harsh or criticism that may not even be warranted.
Exactly. Another thing, we were speaking earlier about getting outside yourself. Green space.
Yeah, literally outside yourself, mentally, and outside in nature.
Yes. Outside in nature has been scientifically proved to change somebody's mood on a dime. When you are getting down that rabbit hole and you're perseverating, literally making yourself get up, get your coat on, and walk out the door can do absolute wonders. Taking a walk. Something about looking at the sky, looking at the greenery, being among nature. Somebody also who did some research suggested find yourself in a situation, even if it's the birds chirping or the tree that's blossoming or the flowers that are growing, allow yourself to experience awe in whatever way you can at that moment. And you'd be surprised at how experiencing awe in nature or in the world can impact your mood.
I think it also improves your breathing and your heart rate because you can feel yourself almost, the shoulders go down. You can feel a little bit of relaxation, and then the breathing starts to not be as rapid or as anxious.
Yes.
So I think that's probably true too.
It's very true. In the same way, my rabbi once told me, and she's very wise, she once told me, when you allow yourself to experience joy, joy is a healing balm. And the reason for that is that when you experience joy with other people, you get outside of what you're doing in your head. You are no longer perseverating about whatever it is it was. And then after you experience the joy, what's really exciting, you can take that with you. So you say to yourself after the experience, wow, I was able to stop worrying for the last 2 hours. I didn't think about it.
And it doesn't have to be something grandiose. I mean, I think you can find those moments of joy in just small snippets or small remembrances or in connecting with another person, to where you don't have to look for anything giant and earth-shattering. They can be little moments that build and then take you out of that space.
Exactly. Something else you can do for other people when you see that they're worried and they may not tell you that they want help. Touch is a very interesting thing. Touch helps us breathe, live, act, be alive. When someone touches you, it makes you feel like you're there, like you're with them. It takes you, again, away from being in your own head.
But everyone's not a hugger and touchy-feely person, so
no, they're not.
You have to be careful so you know who your people are.
Exactly.
And if it's just closeness, because sometimes space is an issue.
Exactly.
Like, you know, don't get in my space or be too close.
Exactly. Like, for instance, my husband, when he has seen me be worrying about something or be upset about something, he will come over and just rub my back. Now, I'm not saying that he should or I should do that with everybody I meet who I think is worried.
Yeah.
But so yes, know your audience, know who you're with,
Yeah.
understand that. But touch is something that that can help in many situations. And most people that know you're worrying are close enough to at least touch your arm or something
Or to
like
say,
that.
do you need a hug?
And if not that, then another way of helping somebody who's worrying, who may not say to you, I want you to listen to me, doing something that has nothing to do with this. So for instance, I know that somebody's worried about their elderly parent, and there's nothing that I can do about their parent. But I can go to the store and pick up a few things that I know they need. Or I can make them dinner.
Yeah.
Or I can just show up and say, you know, I found this for you today. I saw this in the store and I know you'd love it. So little things like that. I made you something today. I made some brownies for you. Those are ways that you can support the people in your life who might be going through a hard time or who might be experiencing the kind of worrying that we're talking about.
So we're giving them those little glimmers of joy too.
Exactly.
And then you give them to yourself when you do those
Exactly.
acts of kindness.
And before I forget, what goes along with this too is all of the people we're talking about, these are people who are our coaches. These are people who are on our team. Everybody needs somebody, one person, 5 people, 20 people, to bounce ideas off of and to say, listen, I'm really worried about something. Can you listen? Are you available? Are you able to listen to me about that?
Sometimes those first words out of your mouth are so hard though, because you're so swept up in just trying to survive the moment or trying to survive the situation. The thought of breaking it down again for someone else and telling them about it seems overwhelming.
It is. And that's when you might want to speak to a therapist, because the therapist, you can go into the office or a coach and not say anything, and the therapist will initiate the conversation with you.
Yeah.
You know, what we're talking about now, when we're so overwhelmed that we can't even speak about it, is now moving into more of a anxiety reaction. And so worrying is something, and we're talking about worrying. But there's also all kinds of generalized anxiety reactions and phobias and other kinds of anxiety that can take over.
So worrying can transition into some of these other things unless you break the cycle, you're saying.
Yes, but one does not mean you're going to move to the other. So for instance, when you're sad, you're not necessarily going to get depressed.
Yeah.
And when you're worried, you're not necessarily going to get into a generalized anxiety reaction. But if you are moving toward some kind of anxiety reaction, like you're having panic attacks, anxiety attacks,
Not sleeping.
not sleeping, not eating, you're constantly, your palms are sweaty, you feel like you can't breathe, feel like you're having a heart attack, feel like you're going crazy. Those are all ways of experiencing anxiety. And when you experience those, my advice is to seek out professional help. And here is one time, and I don't often recommend medication for most things, but I do recommend medication for anxiety. Medication is something that can help tremendously. It can change you from 1 to 100. It can allow you a life that you're not leading. And so again, that's something that you have to discuss with your doctor, and also sometimes goes along with therapy or not. But those are things that's different than worrying, but that we can all experience.
So how do you ask for help if, let's say, you've got so many things on your plate between work and family and other obligations and maybe family health issues, to where you can't find a minute, and then if you do have time off, you just want to sleep and not even answer the phone and don't want to see anybody because you've got to somehow get your head and your body together. How do you reach out at that point?
If you're using that time to get yourself together, that's good. If you don't then end up reaching out to someone, then the people around you need to notice that, and they need to move in. They need to not move in, not move into your house, but they need to move toward you and make sure that you're getting the help that you need.
So for all of us, we need to be aware of our circle, and we also need to be aware of people around us to notice if there are things that seem awry.
And we need to contact someone. If we are feeling that we need help or we're overwhelmed, we need to contact someone. One thing I forgot to mention that I do want to mention at the end, and this is about worrying, not anxiety. When you are worrying about something, this is going to sound crazy, but this is going to help. Organize something. It's scientifically been proved that when you're overwhelmed and you feel, and you're going down the rabbit hole and you're thinking about it and perseverating, if you organize your pantry or your drawers or your closet, I promise you, it will have a positive impact.
Not only for the worrying, but think about how nice and clean it's going to be.
It's great.
Or how organized it's going to be.
It's good.
Yeah.
And it parallels the fact that your mind doesn't feel organized. So it makes perfect sense that would help you.
So I'll take back my initial statement, is worrying ever good? Because now I know that worrying's not good. So I found the answer to that. So if you find that you are worrying, and you've given us some steps of how to kind of stop that, I'm still a little curious as to how can you recognize it early so you're not in the middle of it and have to react or put in tips in order to stop it. So how can we avert it even from starting to happen and affecting us?
Such a good question, Rose. Get yourself in the present. That is the absolute first thing to do. If you're worrying, put yourself not in yesterday, not in tomorrow, put yourself in right now. And that is the beginning. And it's absolutely the way out of it.
So it's like if you know you have a big event coming up, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be traveling to this graduation, I'm going to travel to this wedding, and I'm just know such and such is going to happen, which is probably not, but you're getting ahead of it. You're like, whoa, stop. Just put yourself,
You're catastrophizing. Start talking to yourself the way you would a friend. Now, come on, you're actually catastrophizing now. That's probably not going to happen. That's very unlikely to happen. Start taking the steps that we talked about to help yourself. And we talked about a lot of them today. But the very first one is, what am I grateful for right now? And get outside as you're having that conversation with yourself.
Well, and I think the other thing is to give the time to answer that question. Like, give the time if it's going to be a journal. Give the time to say, what am I grateful for? Or what did bring me joy? Or what can bring me joy for me to do right now? And I love the idea about organizing, because I know that works for me too. That works for me too.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I may be swept up in something. I'm just going to dump the linen closet, or I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go through all this stuff and do it. And it really does work. Is it because your mind is somewhere else, or it's the tactile of you're physically doing something and you're concentrating?
It's because your mind is so overwhelmed with and feels so disorganized that the act of organizing something calms your mind.
So as we age and we're worrying more and more, so if we're finding, other people in our lives that are worrying, we're treating them as that friend to try to say, listen first, and how can I help you, and those kinds of things, and not being dismissive. And then
Definitely not.
Do we want to try to find little things of joy, or give them some little gifts, or just remembrances of different things? Does that help?
I think being empathic is huge, very, very powerful, hugely successful. Being empathic is the first step. Asking if they want advice is the second step. And then if you want to, even if you haven't done those steps 1 and 2, if you want to just do something for someone else because you know they're struggling, that's a wonderful way to help somebody who's worried.
Those are the answers. We've covered it all. Thanks so much for joining us for Real Life with Susan Harf. And let's not worry. I'm Rose Martin for Real Life. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
This program is brought to you by the generous support of the Secular Society, advancing the interest of women in the arts in Virginia and beyond.